everybody, I'm Tom Vasel. Welcome to 7 Short Reviews, where I take a look at various games and tell you about what I think about them and a little bit about how they play. Here we go. Okay, so first we're going to start with How Dare You? How Dare You, which has some of the creepiest box cover art I've ever seen. I don't know what that's supposed to stand for. It's very weird. But it is a little party game, very small, you can see, about guessing trivia numbers. There's a little more than that. Let me show you. In each round of the game, there's a card, and it says that the starting player says a random number. I would have included a die myself to roll that number, but whatever. You just pick a random number. So this will say the max number of legs in a giant Amazon centipede. Then the starting player will say any number they want. I don't know, 20. The next player goes, I think there's more than 20, 25. And it sounds like an auction, but that's what you're doing. You're going around and saying a higher number until someone goes, let's say I said 92, and the next person says no. There's definitely not 92, so they dare me. At that point, we turn the card over, and there's 46. Says not as many as you thought, huh? That is true. It's called a centipede. I'm all confused. Anyway, the person who called me out, I'm then required to take this card because I'm the one who said 92. Now, if the person had called me out, let's say I had said 41, I'm like, haha, 41 is under 46, then they would take the card instead. And we go to the next category, wild animals, or words, or babies, or fashion, or architecture, or chocolate. All kinds of things here. Now, when someone has a certain number of cards, and that depends on the number of players. So, for example, if it was a seven-player game, when someone has 3 cards, the game ends. And then you add up the points here that it shows, the number of ducks on the cards, and whoever has the most points is the big loser. There is no winner. I guess everyone else. There's a few other rules that you can play with. You can double dare, where you kind of just go back to the person who dared you. That's a rule that you can add. And then you take 2 cards if you're wrong. There's these doubling cards. If you guess a number that's at least twice as much as the previous one, you get one of these cards, and these cards are worth -1 point at the end of the game, which is kind of nice. And there's even a throw a fit rule, and I'll leave you to read the rules to find that for yourself. How Dare You is a fun little game. It's a pocket game, and so I kind of get the idea of just carrying this around and playing the game. There was a few rules things, like one said the number of words spoken in a day, and I thought, does that mean a person or humanity in general? And there's some minor stuff like that. And honestly, you could have people just drop giant numbers out right away and they get called out. But it's fun. It's just a fun little game. In fact, I have yet to find one here where I knew the answer to it. Most of these, no one really knows the answer. You might have some idea of how many are in it. And it's just fun to go back and forth like that. I don't necessarily like the idea of there's one loser and everyone else wins. It seems like you could easily do the same thing and say whoever has the fewest points is the single winner. And that's just the way I would play. But at the end of the day, I think it's more about the experience than it is about the game. How Dare You? I think it's a fun little game. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Check it out. Risk Strike, Fast and Fierce World Domination. Now, this is obviously based on the board game Risk. It is not the first game to be based on the board game Risk. There's been Risk the card game. There's many different Risks. This one is basically Risk the card game and promises to do so in a very quick amount of time. Let's check it out. In this game, players are trying to get 2 of these domination coins. And the way you get them is to have enough cards in that particular continent. So Asia, there's an 8 on it. So if I have 8 Asian cards in front of me, I'll take this coin. If I have 6 North American cards in front of me, 4 African cards in front of me, I'll take their particular coins. Now, let's say I get 6 North American cards and I lose some. I don't lose the coin, but if someone else would then get 6, they would take the coin from me, or if they get more than I have. So that's how you get the coins. How do you play? Well, you'll start with some tactics cards in your hand and some continent cards face up in front of you. On a player's turn, they draw 2 cards. You can draw both from one of the 2 decks or 1 from each deck. It's up to you. Continent cards go face up in front of you. The other cards go in your hand. You then will pass or attack. If you pass, you draw another tactics card and play goes to the next person. If you attack, though, let's say I'm like, ooh, I would like to attack my good friend next to me, and they have 3 Africa. I'm going to attack I can always attack from the same continent. I don't have any Africa, so I can attack from an adjacent one. There's a little map that shows, and hey, Asia is adjacent. So then, both sides can play troop cards. So let's say I add 2 troops to my side, and the opponent adds 1 troop to their side. Troop cards are a lot of the cards in the tactics deck. So then the attacker can roll up to 3 dice, as long as you have 3 cards, which I do. The defender rolls 2 dice if they have 2 cards, which they do. We roll and we compare pairs. All right, so in the first battle, we tied. Ties go to the defender, so the defender kills one of my troops. In the second one, the attacker wins, so I kill one of their troops. And now we get to roll again. I still roll 3. They still roll 2. I could stop if I want to, but why? I'm feeling pretty good about this. So 5, 4, and 2. And they rolled a 3 and a 2. The attacker wins twice. I now steal 2 of the African cards from them. Now they're only going to roll 1 die because they're down to 1 card. I'm definitely not stopping now, but they just won, so they kill my troop. So let's try it again. I'm down to 2 dice because of Asia, but I finally beat them and take the last Africa card. Had I lost, they would have taken one of my Asian cards. That's it. The rest of the game has some tactics cards, like this one says add 2 to each die you roll. You play it after you roll the dice. Or you can play 2 different continent cards or a tactic card. Sometimes continent cards are lost and put in the middle, and then when you draw, you can draw from them instead of the top of the deck. That's it. First person to get 2 of these is the winner. Risk Strike is definitely speed Risk. It's definitely a fast version of Risk. I mean, this game could take 10 minutes or maybe even less. It is really quick. You're just playing cards, and you have to take it not seriously at all. You play games. I mean, I played one game of this and just got obliterated by my opponent, and we're like, ha, 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 and moved on. The cards in here are pretty strong. Just like Risk, if you have more cards, you're probably doing better than the other person. When you have to draw 2 cards in your turn, and you've used up your tactics, and you've had all your continents stolen, there's not a whole lot you can really do. But it's also not a long, drawn-out process, which can be sometimes just strenuous and torturous, like Risk can be. The components are fine. These little coins are neat plastic coins. It's really easy to play and teach. And I find it to be fun, but it's not one that I would want to play all the time. I'm giving this a 6.5 because it's almost there. I did not I enjoyed playing it, but it's over very quickly. It's so light, it's fluff. But if you said you want to play Risk, I would be like, you mean Risk Strike? Because this is the version I would want to play. Beyond that, I think it's going to make a lot of people happy. It might be something you could play in a small space. It doesn't take all day. It might satiate people who like Risk, although I doubt it because I think people would really want those big, long, drawn-out battles. But of the small versions of Risk, this is definitely one of the better ones. So it is fast and fierce world domination. Let's take a look at Zoo King. This is a game about building a great zoo, and it's sponsored by Dippin' Dots, which cracked me up because I assumed when I heard that it was not a very good game. But it is a pretty good game. Spoilers. Let me show you how it plays. Each player in this game will start with 1 staff or facility that you'll draft. So I have the trainer here, and you'll pay some of your original money to get these. Each player is going to start with 1,000 zoo bucks, but this person is going to save me 100 on the purchase of show animals. A show animal will have that particular symbol up in the top. This tiger's a show animal. They're only going to cost me 400. You'll have 1 line here, a deck of staff and facility cards, and 1 line of animal cards. On a player's turn, the first thing you'll do is you'll draw the top event card and do whatever it says. This puts a card in someone else's zoo. It subtracts 2 from their zoo's prestige. There's a tour group. I got 200 from the bank. And if anyone else is a tour guide, they get 100 from the bank. That's one of the staff you can take. Here, everyone gets 100 for every show animal in their zoo. Here's more bad publicity. Here's an ad campaign. You can purchase this card for 100 and count it towards your zoo's star total. There's a lot of admission cards in the deck. Everyone gets 100 bucks from the bank. So that's going to be the first thing you do in your turn. Then you have 2 actions. Your actions can be to buy any of these cards out here. So I might be like, I would like the tiger. That's going to cost me 400. So I pay 400, and I now have a tiger in my zoo in front of me. I can buy more staff and more facility. You just can't have 2 of the same one. So I already have a trainer. I can't take another trainer. I could also draw the top card of a deck and hope that's one I can afford or want to buy. If I don't, I put that in the discard pile. You can also buy the top card of a discard pile for a discount of 100. So you're setting other people up if you don't buy something. And you can exchange an animal in your zoo for another animal that's the same price or less if you want to do that. Maybe for some reason I suddenly want this gorilla in my zoo. There's a few other rules that will happen during the course of the game. If you ever get a pair of animals, you'll get $100. Hey, you made a pair of animals. But what's important is this event deck. So you've been seeing different events come out, but you pre-make this deck at the beginning of the game, and after an even number of turns, instead of an event, an award will show up. And so this goes to the player with the most felines. So whoever has most felines gets this card. The next card here says award to the person with the most endangered animals. The next one goes to the person with the most birds. Then we have 3 more. This is a 3-player game. There'll be 3 more events. Then this goes to the person with the most staff cards. Whoever has the most money. The person with the most animals of single habitat. Then the most habitats in their zoo. Whoever has the highest star total. And here's the thing. You're trying to get 3 of these awards, 4 in a 2-player game. As soon as you get 3 awards, you win. So you're preparing for these awards, but you're not sure what order they're going to come out with. And that's the game. Zoo King is a very enjoyable game. And the idea of the awards coming up, and you don't know what order they're in, so it's a good idea to go over the awards at the beginning of the game with everybody so that you know, hey, there's most cats, and there's most, of this. And you're trying to figure out what you want to have the most of different things, but you don't know what's going to come up. So the game is also fairly light, so you have to keep that in mind. But I like the art. I like the simplicity. There's a few things I'm not a big fan of. Don't love the event cards that are negative towards other players. Those could have been completely cut out. I don't mind the cards that are negative towards the player who draws them because there are some facility or some staff that can avoid that. And so that's kind of like I'll buy this person and hope the bad cards, when they show up, they don't hurt me. That's not a problem. But the card that you'd put in front of somebody else, that feels unnecessary. It also doesn't feel very thematic. Am I sabotaging someone else's zoo? Bad publicity. Am I talking smack about the Detroit Zoo down here in Miami? But other than that, I found it to be very entertaining. It's really quick. And that awards, how they come out in order, provides some tension. You're like, ooh, I have the most cats. Please let that be the first award. And then you have a few turns in between the awards coming to kind of reorient yourself. You're like, okay, well, this hasn't come out yet. Most stars. So now I want stars. And you're trying to pick that best action. It's simple. This is one that could be sold at a zoo, and I think it would be worth it for people to buy. I'm giving this one a 7.5. It just really charmed me. That's Zoo King. All right, let's take a look at Beaver Creek. This is a dexterity style game, and you just saw us play it live a few weeks ago on the Dice Tower. But in case you missed that, let me show you how it plays. Everyone's going to start with a certain amount of logs. So in a 4 or 5 player game, you'll have 6 of these big ones, 4 small ones. You'll start with 2 beavers on the back of the box here in the starting spaces, and then each player is going to roll dice on their turn. So one die is going to tell you how many beavers and logs you need to place. It's always going to be at least 1 of each. This one is 2 of each. The other die is going to tell you how to do it. So this one says, I need to place them with my non-dominant hand. So for me, that would be my left hand. When you place logs, you can place them in any order you want. Logs always must be on top of 1 beaver. So that would be fine. I could also, if I could balance it on this, that would be fine. But if you ever let it drop and hit the table, your turn's going to be over, and everyone else gets to discard 1 of their logs. Beavers come from a supply here in the middle, and each beaver must go in a starting spot, or they must go on top of another log. So as time goes by, you're going to see you're going to have all sorts of fun things happen. Probably not that. But again, I'm pretty terrible at this. So, if you have, remember, each log has to go on top of a beaver, but it could also go on top of a log, as long as it's touching 1 beaver. Again, if you mess up, you're going to have to discard 1. The things that it has here, sometimes it makes you play with scissors. Sometimes you have to place a combination of the beaver and the log at the same time, or new logs only touch beavers. You can't touch other logs too. You have to follow these rules. As soon as you drop something, if it hits the table, it's out. If it falls on here, you kind of let the stuff that falls on the board stay where it lands for now. But anytime you mess up, everyone else gets rid of a stick. The first person to get rid of all their sticks is the winner. Beaver Creek is an enjoyable game that I think both kids and families are going to enjoy. It has all the ideas of, hey, put out supports, in this case the beavers, and put logs on top of them. It looks fantastic as you're setting it up, and it's quick and silly, especially with the other die making you do some weird thing as you place them down. This is definitely going to be geared more towards kids. I have one problem with the game, which is I don't like the end conditions in the sense that if on your final turn, you just drop a stick on there, you don't care if it messes up because you're going to win. And they told me they're going to fix that in future editions where you can't win by also someone else messing up and your last stick going. Your last stick has to be placed properly for you to win. And in fact, that's how I'm going to play this version from here on out. But it's quick, it's simple, it's easy. This is one that I'm going to give a 7 to, but especially geared towards kids. I really like Beaver Creek. Where's my ride? So this is all about texting here. Where are you? And then the person just texts in emojis. So emojis, you're trying to look for your rideshare person, your Uber, your Lyft, trying to get them to pick you up, but the app isn't working. You can only send emojis to them, or you can send nonsense text to them, and the driver is sending you emojis. This is kind of a party game, a cooperative party game, where you're using limited communication to figure something out. This is a cooperative game. One person is the driver. That person is going to have a little shield, and they also have a bag of emoji tokens here. And everyone else has a big stack of text here. The driver is going to have a card. So here, a location card, it's museum. They're going to mix it up with 8 other locations and put them out in front of everybody. Everyone is trying to, cooperative, you're all trying to win together, guess which one the driver is going to before they drop to a 1-star rating. How does that work? Well, 2 players at a time will draw 2 texts each. They'll look at them and they'll each pick one. So here they put idiot proof and high fashion. They're not allowed to communicate with each other while they're picking those. The driver has 5 emojis that they've drawn randomly from a bag behind them. They can place 1 or more emojis on each of these. So I'm trying to get them to guess museum. I'm looking around. I don't want them to guess anything else. So high fashion, I'll put this goggle on it. Definitely it's idiot proof. I guess a museum. Maybe? So I'll put this token on it. I can put 2 tokens on them if I want to. But either way, people are looking at these tokens. And they are then trying to guess out here. Now you can decide not to guess. You either guess or not guess as a group. The group can talk and they'll be like, okay, we're guessing it's the planetarium. If you guess correctly, if they guess museum, boom, everyone wins. Game's over. If they guess incorrectly, you turn over 2 of these tiles. If any of them show a broken star, you put it here. Once you get 4 of those, the game is over. So 4 of these 10 have that on it. If the players decide not to guess, they simply turn over 1 of these, which could still be a loss of a star. Most of them are fine, as you can see. So the game could be over really quickly, depending on if you draw these stars or not. That's it. Let me show you some more of the texts that are in here. Part-time lovers, spirit, plastic bags, pocket candy, Polaroid cameras, spontaneous combustion, squeaky wheel, stapler, sticks and stones, all sorts of things. Loops and loops, love letters, caught red-handed. And then the emojis are all sorts of things, popular emojis that I suppose a lot of people use. When I first heard about Where's My Ride, I was pretty excited about the whole thing. The idea of it sounded pretty good. Now, this box cover doesn't do itself any favors, and the game itself doesn't look particularly good. In fact, I'd say the production is not great, with the exception of, I'm a big fan of these map cards. I really like how they look. They just look interesting. The problem with this game is that the communication is limited and makes no sense. And maybe this is because I'm too old. I'll take that into consideration. But the text, so if I have a text here, taxidermy, and I have the morgue or the hospital, that might work, right? So there's some interesting things here. But then my emoji is a devil or a guy with a mustache. I put that in a card and people are like, they're talking like, what did he mean? I wonder what he meant. And no one has any idea. It's just too obscure. It's like when someone says, guess my favorite number, and I'll give you a clue, red. Does that mean 3? Because there's 3 letters in red? Is it because you want me to stop? So 0? That's what I'm talking about. I like limited communication, but in this one it's too obscure and everyone talks past each other. And I found myself disliking every play of this game. So unfortunately, that combined with, honestly, a very lackluster look, with text that felt like they just pulled them off a random generator, and then the turning the tiles over is also super random. You could lose immediately. Now, the game is fairly quick, so I'll give it that, but not enough for me to enjoy it. 4 out of 10. Where's my ride? All right, let's take a look at Gin Crafters. Now, this is a very gorgeous little cover, a small little game about crafting gin. I know nothing about neither crafting gin nor gin itself. I did learn a little bit from this game. Well, let's talk about how it plays. In this game, players are going to be crafting gin, and you're going to be doing that. Everyone's going to start with some 3 money here, and you're also going to start with some gin and some brand cards in your hand. Gin are things that you're going to create to get points, and the gin crafter brand cards are going to be essentially endgame scoring at the end of the game. Like this one says, if I have the most amount of gin distilled, I'm going to get 2 extra points. On a player's turn, they have 2 actions. And your actions can be simply just to work and get some money, take 3 money. But often it's going to be to buy cards. So you'll notice there are different cards out here. There are botanical cards and there are juniper berries. When you buy a botanical card, it's going to cost the amount that it shows here. And this is a little, I find this to be a little confusing. -1 means you pay 1 to do it. I wish it wasn't that way because that looks like a discount almost. But so I can pay 1 to take a blackberry or nutmeg. I can pay 2 to take a Japanese pepper or a lavender. I'll take the blackberry. When you take cards, the ones above them are going to slide down, and these will replace them from the top of the deck. Same thing with the juniper berries. I can also take some more 2 gin cards and 2 brand cards and keep 1 of each of those added to my hand as one of my actions. But the biggest action that you're going to do is you're going to do distillation. So whenever you decide to make one of the gin cards in your hand, you're going to look at that gin card and see the ingredients. Every gin card needs a juniper berry. Great. And then I need one of these 2 types of ingredients. So coriander and angelica cover the 2 ingredients I need. Whenever you take ingredients, they'll be placed face up in front of you. When I make this, I'm going to get 5 points. I'm going to set this aside. I also always set aside the juniper berry that I use to make it. Now that juniper berry will give me an extra point if one of the ingredients matches the symbol on it. So this might not be the best juniper berry to use. This one would probably be better since I use coriander. These are set aside and I would score 5, or if I use the right juniper berry, an extra maybe 6 points. Then the ingredients that I used, one of them I'm going to make the focus of the drink, and I will discard that one. But you'll get whatever the bonus is on the bottom. This says give me a coin for each distilled gin card. This one says draw a botanical card from the deck. This one says receive 2 coins. This one says forfeit 2 victory points to take an extra action. So you pick the ingredient you lose, but then it's lost, and so you're going to have to fill up on more ingredients to do more. And of course, you're going to run out of juniper berries, so you need to take more of them. In fact, some gins are just multiple juniper berries. When you get points, you'll just move here along this point track. When you hit 10, you get a free inspiration action, which is drawing 2 of these and keeping 1, whether the brands or the gin. And once someone gets to 30, they win the game. Gin Crafters is a delightfully simple game. I really like, first of all, I love the artwork. When you look at all these different ingredients, saffron, almond, nutmeg, yuzu, and ginger, the little symbols on the cards, just very clear, easy to see. It's really nice at the bottom, the actions that you can take, the juniper berries, and really the game is, it's gonna move around pretty quickly. I'm taking some coins. I'm taking an ingredient. You can even have some free actions where you can pay 3 or 2 to wipe all the ingredients and put more out when you're looking for something specific. And you can, and this is an interesting idea, you can use someone else's ingredient. You can borrow it from them. They don't lose it. And in fact, they can't say no either, but they get 2 coins when you borrow it. So it's something you want to do kind of more in desperation because you are helping another player get the money to buy the ingredients that they want. If I would say anything negative about the game, it's that it's a little sterile. Most of the cards give the same amount of points. You'll see people as they're moving along the track are kind of moving together. So you really got to watch your actions. And also the brand cards, which give you bonus points, near the end of the game on the very last turn, when someone gets a 30, they end the game, but these can add more points and make someone else go ahead and win. And so near the end of the game, this is kind of like the last action is people drawing these. And sometimes it's lucky because you'll draw one and go, the most amount of coins, 3 points. I happen to have the most amount of coins. So that's a little off, but that's my only small negative. I think the game is gorgeous. It's really easy to teach people. The theme is present and strong despite me not knowing anything about it. I understood it. Each player has a little card that shows them how to do everything. It just works really well. I like Gin Crafters. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Let's take a look at Dawn of Ulos, a role-playing tale. Now, role player, the game, established a fantasy universe, and this takes place in that universe. I didn't know a lot about the game, but I'm going to be able to tell you about the game right now. This is essentially fantasy stock markets. I know, you probably weren't expecting that from the cover. Nobody was. Let's take a look at it, though. The board is made up of 6 very satisfyingly interconnecting tiles. I love how these fit together to build a set of random terrain. There are 10 different fantasy races. You're going to pick 5 of them to play the game with. Each person is going to take one of these, like gods and all this stuff means nothing. It's just basically a player reference card. Everyone is the same. A player's turn is pretty straightforward. You're going to place a tile, take an action, and draw a tile. When you place a tile, you're going to place it on the board. You have these 3 tiles. They're all double-sided. You'll be drawing from them. And you must place it so it matches the terrain. So let's say I place these like this. Then, sometimes placing a tile will cause things to happen. In this case, I can establish a camp. So let's say goblins are in our game. And the goblin leader piece looks like this. Each leader piece is made up of 3 tiles. The goblin leader piece happens to look like this. So I'm going to place it like thus on those, because there are now 3 tiles. These are starting tiles that are on the board, and I can fit him on there. From now on, whenever I add tiles that are next to this goblin, let's say I add these, I can increase the strength of that goblin. So if you look, each of these has 2 different types of terrain. Well, most of them do. One of them works with water, but this type of terrain, he has this in forests. So I added a forest, so that will increase the goblin's strength by 1. And if there's ever multiple factions on the board and you connect their camps with tiles, then there will be a conflict. At the beginning of the game, you're going to have all the factions here on this board, and they're all considered lost because they're not established. As soon as camps have been established, they're going to be in the game. They start at lost, they'll be in the game, and as they increase in strength, you'll move them up like this. The first person to establish a camp will get a card, but as time goes by, at the end of every person's turn, one of the actions you can take, you can buy cards or you can use an ability. When you buy cards, so let's say I want to buy goblin cards, you can buy up to 3 cards of anyone who's active. So if the orcs and the goblins were both active here, I could buy cards from either of them. If more factions are in play, I could buy up to 3 cards. The cost of the card is their strength underneath it. You're going to be paying using influence. This might look like coins. This is the deluxe version, because it is. It's really just money. But anyway, they call it influence. You pay that and get the cards and add them to your hand. Later on, hopefully you'll be able to get rid of the cards, or at the end of the game, they're going to be worth more points. To use an ability, you're discarding one of these cards, and it says for every 2 goblins of the strength that the goblins currently are at, a chosen opponent must reveal a random card, gain the spoils value, that's the bottom, of the strongest faction revealed. And there are some characters that don't have a card that can be used, but can actually be used in combat. Combat is the most complex thing in the game. If 2 factions merge, the person who merges them decide who the attacker is. Everyone's going to be playing cards face down in front of them and revealing those cards. You can put down cards that are kind of a fake card that aren't one of the 2 factions just to pretend that you're doing more. There are some conflict abilities from some of the factions, and whoever wins the faction basically gets rid of the opponent's faction, and everyone has to lose half the cards that they committed for both the winning and the losing factions, and then you'll just adjust the power and the winning one will go up based on what they've won. There's a little bit more involved, but basically it's just the same as a merger. There's a few other rules in the game. There are ways to get these tiles. You'll turn them over and they'll give you a special ability that you can use later on. If a faction gets all the way to the top, they're flipped to their legendary side. If you get 2 flipped to the legendary side, the game ends, or more likely if you run out of tiles, the game ends. At that point, you'll find the value of all your cards you have of each of the factions, and add up the points plus the money that you got during the course of the game, and whoever has the most is the winner. My first game of this, I went in, I didn't know much about it. I was setting it up, and I was reading all the terminology, and I was like, this feels like Acquire, a very popular, acquisition and merger type game. And I played it, and it really threw me off. The second time I went into this, I said everyone at the table, this is Fantasy Acquire. This is about money. And it still didn't go over well. And in my plays of this, I found myself to not being enjoying it. And I want to explain a little bit why. I think the production's fantastic. Thunderworks does a great job on that. Although I think these not being painted actually hurts them, the little miniatures, because you're trying to figure out where stuff is sometimes. And remembering what faction is which can be a little tricky. But first of all, I think the theme works dramatically against the game. I don't think the Venn diagram of people who want to play a fantasy game and an economic stock game is that big. I'm actually a big fan of both those genres. I love fantasy games, I love economics, and I don't know that I need them to mix. And in fact, it just got confusing. There's battles, but they're mergers. There's influence, there's spoils and strength, but all that stuff is just referring to money and money amounts. And I found it to be consistently confusing. And in fact, we were just saying stuff like, give me 3 shares of orcs. That's not that great. The second problem with the game is it feels very chaotic. The math in it is very tricky. If you look at how the math goes up on the 2 numbers here, as you have cards, when you discard cards, you're discarding them for the spoils. And there's a lot more little rules in the game. By the way, I don't think the rule book is very well written. It's okay written. I had to go through it multiple times. I was confused on the basic premises of the game, honestly, for a while. But I don't understand this math. It doesn't make sense to me. Most shares go up in value, and this goes up in value, but it's 7, 8, 8, 8, 8, 9, 9, 9, 9, 10. And so you make it go up a few, but it doesn't do much. And like many of these stock market games, as one of these gets bigger and bigger, it's hard to stop them. And if someone has a lot of shares of that, you can say, well, let's attack them with these smaller ones and make them waste their cards. But if their strength is already really high, they only have to discard a card or 2 to stop you. I just really didn't like the game that much. I wanted to enjoy this more. I tend to like stock market games, but the theme kept obscuring what was going on. The putting the tiles out and stuff was mishmashy. It felt messy. The fact that you have to put the tiles on top of very specific things. It felt like someone played a choir and said, I want to make a fantasy version of that. And they did. And then they were like, let's add new rules. There's 10 factions. One of them's really mean. It blows tiles up, which lengthens the game and makes it unnecessarily in your face. And I don't know, it's just not one that I found myself to enjoy at all. So I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. That's Dawn of Ulos. And that's it, folks. That is 7 more quick reviews. Hey, which one of these did you like the best? Tell me in the comments. Which one did I miss the mark on? Tell me that in the comments too. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been 7 quick reviews on the Dice Tower.